Reminds me of like an old 80s computer game, doesn't it? Where, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, almost like in more modern games, like something like Minecraft.
Minecraft,
made out of squares,
Maybe they were playing Minecraft when they were writing this.
Well, they should have stayed playing Minecraft.
Playing Minecraft.
And not written. Just done. Hello and welcome to Rewriting Bad Books. It seems a long time since we've been here doing one of these, but we have reconvened today with Scott, who is 10-0 down in the series. And today we're going to look at Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. Soule. Let's have a quick discussion about the history of the Light of the Jedi, which is Disney have announced their new, like almost like a cinematic universe. It is in the Star Wars universe, but it's predating by some 200 years anything that we've seen before, or anything that is currently considered canon that we've seen before. And this is the first book in that series. So what we've done is we picked out 3 passages. 3 passages that are shining starlight beacons of just how exactly you should write for Star Wars. Yeah. I don't know if I can maintain the level of sycophancy enough. I think we might just have to accept that Disney...
I think you could get a little bit more
Disney
hyperbolic there.
I'm not going to invite us to the premiere of any of the movies anytime soon, so we should just resort to being honest about it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Which was pretty terrible. And we have picked these 3 passages.
Oh, you could have picked more on that, couldn't we, really?
Yes. Like pretty much the whole book.
The whole book. Yeah. I've actually written this much.
But we picked 3 passages, and for those of you who are not familiar with the series, what happens is we talk about the passage that we're going to rewrite, then we go away, rewrite them. We come back.
Rewrite it just a little bit better.
Yeah, hopefully improving it. And then we pick a winner between the 2 of us to see who's done the best job.
Usually me.
Which is why I can happily claim that I am winning 10-0.
In all, it's 10. What are the actual scores?
I don't know.
I've lost track.
We are slightly changing the format today, aren't we?
Yeah.
In that instead of rewriting the same passage, we're going to go away and rewrite one of the 3 passages that we discussed without the other one knowing which one we've done, so that we might, when we come back, be comparing different scenes.
That's the hope, yeah.
We might have both decided on one passage that is so bad that it triumphs in the bad stakes, and then it would have like a universal agreement on which one was the worst. Yeah. But the first one, it comes from the first third of the book, and at a point where they are, like I say, the hyperspace anomalies are hitting the planet, causing a lot of damage. They decide to evacuate the planet, and the ships are leaving. And then they encounter something in space. You could almost say they encountered something strange, because that's quite literally what Charles Soule
What a segue into the bit there. That was fantastic.
So what I will do is I will read this passage out.
Yeah.
And then we'll discuss it.
Okay.
But before the ships could reach their destination, they encountered something strange. It looked like a storm, or a storm cloud perhaps. A massive blue-grey swirl of vapour out in space, dense and threatening. Now, it is important, I think, to acknowledge that this is written for a young adult audience. But there are books in this series that are specifically written for the younger end of that market, and this is not one of them.
Right.
So this, you would assume, would be young adults, teenagers and up. Yeah. And of course, like the broader Star Wars audience, some of them might be in their 40s by now. Yeah. Given that the movie's 40-something years old itself. So well, I'm only 21, so I wouldn't know. No, me neither. So what do we make of this passage? Okay. Well, I haven't
lukewarm.
Your feelings are lukewarm?
Yeah, let's move on to the next one. Right. Lukewarm.
So I haven't made huge amounts of notes about this. One is it's a short passage, it doesn't require a lot. But what I have done is I've drawn a hammer. And the reason I've drawn a hammer here is because it's almost like this is how subtle we can be with our words. Have one of them.
Have one of them.
I haven't got a hammer down there. I could have used that as a prop. So it just... that whole thing, it has no artistry at all.
Yeah.
You know, if you talked about the tools of the trade of any sort of art, you know, even if you were doing like shaping rocks and things for sculptures, I'm not even sure that then that's called a hammer. It's probably got like a technical name for it. Yeah. So, but when you do go at art with a hammer, you're generally going to produce something that is awkward and clunky, and that's what that is for me.
I think they're trying to set like an ominous tone, aren't they?
Yeah,
but it's not doing that, is it?
Does it do anything? If you picked out any of them words, the only one that you would say you could use in any kind of ominous tone would be strange.
Yeah.
But then it would take you 30 seconds to pick up a thesaurus and find a better word than strange. And the fact that you haven't done that is like, is that because you have no faith or confidence in your audience's intellectual ability? Or is it because you're lazy? Or is it because you're rubbish? Because that's a question that I come to with this book quite a lot. Like, why have you done the things that you've done? And to try and go, right, usually when we look at a book, you go, why have you done the things that you've done? And you're looking at the language and the tools that the author has used to see some kind of, I'm going to use the word artistry again, some sort of brilliance, some sort of technique that you have used to show that, I mean, you may not be the master of your art, but at least you have an acknowledgement of the fact that it is an art.
But like all those things that you were saying, the manipulation of language, just it helps you create some kind of understanding, doesn't it? It all goes into building your image, your picture, your scene, and it all helps the reader to kind of discern what you're trying to do if you do include those things, you know. Definitely.
If you were thinking, well, I'm not setting an ominous tone here, I'm not trying to set like an atmosphere. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring that sudden stop of these ships that are racing towards a destination, which he doesn't say. There's no words in here that suggest any sort of pace or fast movement. There's no sense that the ships are moving quickly to get away from a danger. There's nothing there that he's doing with the language. But if you were just trying to go, I want to have a fast thing that I bring to a stop to try and make people sort of almost that cinematic. I've been, wow, that was a shock. I didn't expect that. It was really hard to do in a book.
This is almost like an aside, isn't it? You know, like you get on a script or you get on a monologue or something. You know, it's like an aside to what they're doing. Oh, by the way, it's, you know,
building on what you just said. If we talk about the language of it, the word strange. It is exactly that, isn't it? It's like that word. You say, I saw something strange the other day. Yeah. You wouldn't be thinking this is dangerous. You wouldn't be thinking this is scary or frightening. You'd be thinking like, oh, he means like a cat and a mouse or something that you wouldn't necessarily see every day. Yeah. But it's still only slightly out of the ordinary. Or
something out of the, that's right, yeah.
It's not like, as we see in the second half of the sentence, this space anomaly, which would be something far different to strange.
It would, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Completely unexpected versus slightly out of the ordinary. And the word strange there is giving you the wrong one.
Unless they're being very clever, and that's what they're trying to do.
I'm not getting that from that.
They're trying to just very gently disrupt your balance before actually really doing that.
But we know from
they don't do that in the next sentence.
But we know from the context of the scene that that's not the case. Yeah. And in the next sentence, it's not.
It's lukewarm, isn't it? Have I said that before?
You might have done. Let me read it again. It looks like a storm or a storm cloud, perhaps. A massive blue-grey swirl of vapour out in space, dense and threatening. Now, I haven't made a lot of notes about this.
No.
But in keeping with the previously demonstrated example, I have written English essay. Because when you write an essay in English, you're not allowed to say, this is definitely this. So you have to use words that say, it suggests it's this. It could be that. Potentially what he's suggesting here is this. Yeah. Perhaps what he means when he says this is that. Yeah. And that's exactly what we've got here. It looked like a storm. Or a storm cloud, perhaps. Yeah. You're the writer.
It's almost inviting the audience, the reader, to interpret it, isn't it? But
it screams of, I do not have the courage. What you say is as valid as what I say. Your opinion is right. My opinion is right. We can agree to. That's what it screams of. It's so unconvinced, but this is something you've made. Your job as a writer is to convince the reader. And if you're like, well, it could be this, or perhaps it could be that, you've failed before you've even started. It's almost embarrassing to have that in a book.
Yeah.
For me, I just...
Well, certainly in a context like this, definitely, definitely.
Does your sort of mealy-mouthed, not committing to what it could be, or it could be this or that, help sell this to a reader as something that's threatening or scary?
And immediate? No, it doesn't, does it? It's perhaps. Perhaps it could be this.
Perhaps their life's in terrible danger, but perhaps not.
Perhaps they're not. It could be something strange, but it's probably not.
Man, I really wanted to say in your neighbourhood when you said it could be something strange.
Oh, yeah. Something strange. Yeah. But then it goes on, a massive blue-grey swirl of vapour out in space, dense and threatening. See, there are some of the words there could convey a lot of meaning, but it just doesn't seem to do that for me. Does it you?
Do you think that those words can convey any sort of sense or meaning? I don't, because I look at it and go, the reason that the author has to tell me that is dense and threatening is because he can't portray dense and threatening using the tools of his trade.
It is back to the show, isn't it? And obviously not tell, which is obviously a very known rule to writers, but it does have its place and it needs to be applied here.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
But in terms of simple descriptors, what would you make of that? A massive blue-grey swirl of vapour. Well... Yeah.
Dense and threatening, yeah.
What does that do for you? That's why you have to tack on the end, dense and threatening, because that first part does nothing in any sort of literal sense.
See, what you want to do is basically funnel the dense and threatening feeling into the prior part, don't you? Yeah, that's what you want to do.
From the beginning, not from the it looked like a storm or storm cloud.
Yeah, do away with that.
Needs to come, but before the ships could reach their destination, then bring in dense and threatening.
Yeah.
But don't say it.
Yes, convey it, show
convey
it,
and show it. Because that's what authors do.
Yeah.
You're not telling a story.
Should we just let them know that that's what authors do?
Can you send them an email? This is what authors are supposed to do, to convey these things with their words.
For a Star Wars book, that's what you want those feelings to manifest in you when you read, don't you? You want a bit of a thrill. You want to feel threatened or whatever. That's why you would read a book like that. I
think that's absolutely key to it. That first film is almost like a chase from beginning to end, and when you have a chase movie like that, it's just thrills and spills all the time. You should be excited, you should be fearing and moved by the events of the story.
When you think about what you can do with language, you can be very, very creative and create all sorts of feelings and sense of fear and anything like that in the reader. You can do so much with language that's not being done here.
The writer doesn't know how to write. They're not capable of transmitting an idea to a reader that convinces them. And it might be that they don't believe it themselves, and that's why we get this perhaps rubbish.
And I was going to say, somebody writing for Star Wars should be able to do that, but really any writer trying to write anything needs to be able to do that, don't they?
I think it's fairly obvious that if you want to be a writer and you want to be noticed by a publisher, you have to be able to do better than this.
Yeah.
You have to. Because if you send this in to a publisher and they get 100 manuscripts a day, this is the passage that makes you stand out against your peers.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. They were ugly, blocky things with spikes protruding from them in no discernible pattern. They looked like tools designed for beating somebody to death. That final explanation is so hammer. This is me, hammer. Yeah. Because you can't describe anything. You can't write in a way that describes anything. So I just have to go, this is what it looks like.
This is what it, and this is, They look like tools designed for beating somebody to death.
But they look like tools of death.
Yeah, that's better, isn't it? It's improvement, isn't it?
It's just better straight away because it's not so have one of those to your reader. they can just go,
yeah,
okay, it's like a metaphor. I can deal with this.
Yeah.
But ugly, blocky things with spikes protruding from them and no discernible pattern. Again,
reminds me of like an old 80s computer game, doesn't it? Where, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, almost like in more modern games, like something like Minecraft.
Minecraft,
made out of squares. Yeah.
Maybe they were playing Minecraft when they were writing this.
Well, they should have stayed playing Minecraft.
Playing Minecraft.
And not written. Just done. Yeah. Because this does the same as the previous one, as far as I can say.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Your description is in two sentences.
Yeah.
The first is a descriptive waste of time, a massive blue-grey swirl of vapour, or a big, ugly, blocky thing.
Yeah.
Or waste of time. And then I have to tell you what it is because my description is so lazy that it gives you nothing to work with at all. So then I have to tell you what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, he could just say it looked like a mace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
or something like, just... Yeah. I mean, most kids that are of an age that they will go into a shop and say, that's the book for me, I want that Star Wars one. Whether they buy it with their own money or they're still young enough that mum and dad have to buy the book for them. They're still going to be of an age where they're going to know a little bit about, it's a mace or a morning star or...
So it's coming back to, isn't it? It's the show thing, isn't it, again? I mean, blocky things. It is like Minecraft.
In terms of descriptives, we've talked before about what would you draw?
Well,
a blocky thing. So like maybe a square with a rectangle on the back.
Yeah.
With spikes sticking out.
Yeah.
But then that's not really a tool for beating someone to death. So then maybe like a bit coming out the bottom, like a handle.
But then, you'd probably need a handle just to
look at it,
facilitate the beating to death.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds... Whichever way you try to think about it, it's like, if you think about it at all, it's rubbish.
It's terrible. Yeah, it's really poor.
And it's one of those ones
they should be ashamed of themselves.
There shouldn't be a writer.
No.
If this is the best you can do, you shouldn't be a writer. And if it's not the best you can do, and you put it out anyway, for Star Wars, then fuck you.
The only defence I can think of for this writer is the nihils, isn't it? That's the people. This ugly, blocky, etc., with no discernible pattern, strikes me as being quite, particularly with the spikes, quite chaotic and so forth. So it could be to indicate their intellect.
Yes, and race and all of that comes into it. But the word that you used, chaotic, is better than saying no discernible pattern. Yeah,
that's true, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's definitely true.
and also, as we talked about the language, the words you use, creating the sense is coming back like we talked about. The only word in that previous one that was anything slightly unusual was the word strange. We've got nothing here.
Yeah.
Ugly, perhaps. But is that a word that you really want?
It doesn't do anything, does it? It really doesn't convey anything.
Like hideous or distorted, immediately better than ugly. Even like twisted or something like that would just be better straight off the bat.
A better image, wouldn't it?
It's just, is he writing like this because he's got no faith in his audience's intellect?
Which is a very dangerous ground, isn't it?
Or is he writing like this because he can't do any better?
I would hope it's the latter, because you should never guess about your audience's intellect, should you? You should never be that condescending or,
If you'll permit me to bring up Robert Heinlein, because I don't talk about that much on the chat.
Right, you got 1 minute, go.
Heinlein wrote for young adults.
Yeah.
And when he was asked what the difference was between writing for young adults and writing for adults, he said young adults are more interested, they're more engaged, they have more open minds, they're more receptive to new ideas.
Yeah.
He said, I never write down to children.
Well, that's a very good platform, if you like, to write from, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's a very good place to be.
So you say there's a danger in writing down to your audience, and then the flip side to that is you're saying that he can do better than this. But if you're writing down to your audience like that, you shouldn't be in print.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And if you can't do better than this, you shouldn't
be in print. Yeah.
So
I think, ethically speaking, I hope it's the latter. Yeah, definitely.
I would prefer the idea that
just not too good.
that he's not very good.
Presumably this went through the editors and they all, the committee, it's been sent out, hasn't it? Like this.
You don't know how high up the Disney tree it must have gone, but it must have been a fair way, because this is such a big thing. The scope of this project that they're launching with, like comic books and other novels, there's all sorts of stuff that's planned to be in this universe. It's a huge project.
Yeah.
Why would you not want to start on the front foot with the very best that you can be?
And isn't this just indicative of what's happening to Star Wars, generally?
There's a line in Empire Strikes Back when they're trying to fix the ship and trying to escape, and Han's got a plan, and Leia's like, I'm not sure about your plan. He says, well, I haven't got time to discuss this in a committee. And to me, that also comes back to what we were talking about earlier about this is an art.
Yeah.
And that art is not performed by committees. It's performed by individuals with brilliance.
Yeah.
Okay. But this series has been planned by like half a dozen writers. They brought them all in and said, this is what we're going to do. How do you, what do you think? What do you bring to the table? And they brought in all these different writers, and they all sat around and they did it by committee. And I think that when you do that, then you have no art. You have corporatism.
Yeah.
And I think that is true also of the movies that they have made since Disney bought this. Everything that's come out of Disney related to Star Wars has had no soul. And even the prequels, for all their faults, had a degree of art and soul.
Yeah.
It's depressing. It's depressing that that's true of almost everything that is sold to us as art these days.
Yeah, that's true.
Is corporate. It's soulless.
Designed, obviously, to make... And it still does, doesn't it? Huge money. So it's bizarre sort of paradox, isn't it? It gets... it digresses, the quality, but it seems to expand in terms of popularity. It's a bizarre paradox, really, but there we go.
That part of that is that committee. It comes out of the boardroom. It's like, we know our focus groups tell us this, this, and this. So we will hit this beat and that beat and that beat, and we'll hit them at exactly this time and exactly that time and exactly that time. And there's no doubt that if you're of that mindset where you're just swept along, then the ride is entertaining. But you don't remember it the day after.
Yeah, that's true. How much control does the people on, say, the committee have over a writer like Soule? We're only guessing here, I suppose, but do you think this person is writing this with certain things in mind that has to be achieved?
If you're writing to a specification, it's really hard to be artistic unless it's very general. And like if they said, we have to have a chase scene. Okay, I can do that. It's not difficult to think of a story that will end up with the chase scene at some point. We can do that. But if it's saying, you have to have a chase scene through this tunnel, and it comes out over there at this time because there will be a train, and then they have to jump on that train, and when you start getting in that, it's like, okay, you're starting to become unartistic. But if you or I were set the task of writing to a spec, and they said to you, the Nile ships are this, describe them, you wouldn't go, they were ugly blocky things.
That's very true.
You would actually try to do the best that you could do to describe them in a way that showed your understanding of the art.
Of the requirements,
You might not be able to express yourself freely, but you can still express yourself. And this is not, neither of these passages have expressed anything of any worth.
Of any quality, no.
Or of any quality.
No. No, so you're right. So even if there were stipulations with what how they had to write, that you could still create something better than ugly blocky things designed for beating somebody to death, couldn't you?
If you've got any business being in print, yes, you would do better than that.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Otherwise, you've got no business being in print.
So does that springboard us onto the last one then?
This takes place when the Nihil are trying to extort one of the Outer Rim planets by saying, we know where this anomaly is going to land. If you give us the money, we'll tell you. But they don't quite give the information in time. So the anomaly comes out of hyperspace and hits the planet, causes a great deal of devastation. And from where you're going to read, it's worth saying that there's a previous part of the sentence which we're not including, which explains why it does feel ever so slightly like it's missing a determiner at the start.
Yeah, it does.
Perhaps the tense is not quite right. That's covered in the bit that I've cut out.
Big debris cloud mushrooming out from the surface. Shockwaves starting to roll across the little world. Lots of fire and those dark clouds you got with a really huge explosion. Like a storm, kind of. I just want to laugh. Like a storm, kind of.
Yeah, so you want to laugh.
I know, and people like you who. But it just makes me want to laugh.
If I was a Star Wars fan and people were giving me this, I would be annoyed.
Yeah.
If I was a fan of literature and people were publishing this, I would be annoyed.
Yeah.
So I'm annoyed across the board that would be written in a book that's professionally published.
Yeah. Wow.
I just want those dark clouds you got with a really huge explosion.
Yeah. Honestly, this is what's been given to him, hasn't it, by the committee, and they say, we want something like this, can you now go away and do something? And they've just not done it.
I refuse, actually. I don't accept that. I would say, like a planet's going to get hit and devastated by an explosion.
Yeah.
They might.
That's better. That's
they
more.
might give him that as a brief.
Yeah.
You have to have a planet hit and there'd be a lot of devastation.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't say, and write it like this with lots of fire and those dark clouds you got with a really huge explosion. Because if you had any backbone, you would go, okay, boss, and you'd go away and you'd throw that in the trash and write something half decent.
Well, yeah.
Because that's embarrassing. That's in your name. If you're Charles Soule, that's in your name. So if you're told by a committee this is what you've got to do, you say, well, don't put my name on it then.
Well, that would be
because I've got a reputation.
Best approach, wouldn't it, to that sort of thing? But just probably wants the money, and it's just churned out rubbish, like most commercial art today. Well, that's an oxymoron, really, commercial art, isn't it? But yeah, this is a manifestation of what sort of culture has become. Even if you were told this has to appeal to a lot of people, then go and do it. This doesn't really, does it? Not if you like reading.
The lowest of the 3 films in the series made $1 billion. That's huge. That is absolutely huge box office. That means that the audience for Star Wars is enormous. But what percentage of those people read and read regularly? And what do they like to read? Because I'm going to assume that the people that are in the sort of you do a Venn diagram. This is the Star Wars audience. This is the readers, and you get down to a small bit in the middle. These are the readers that are going to like what we're giving them. People that like to read tend to be, no disrespect to the people that don't, slightly brighter. Right? So they're going to be reading above their sort of age expectations. If they're 10 or 11, they're going to be 11 or 12, they're going to be starting going, right, I want the Hunger Games. Got Marjorie Blackman writes, doesn't insult her audience. You've got Michael Morpurgo writes for a younger audience than I would suggest this book would be suitable for.
Yeah.
And he also wrote like Warhorse, who writes it.
Oh, yeah.
These people are writing for this audience and they're not insulting them.
No.
They're not giving them crap. And the people that read those books are going to come home, pick this up, and they're going to go, that's crap.
They should. Yeah.
Why are you giving me this? It's crap.
Yeah.
And they're going to understand that it's crap because they're bright kids. If you're writing for bright kids, you have to respect that. And you have to give them the best that you can do.
I mean, it's terribly lazy, isn't it? Like a storm, kind of. Yeah, it's shocking.
That kind of thing, again, comes back to the perhaps. I'm not convinced by what I'm writing, so how on earth can a reader be convinced by any of it? But also, that is like a double whammy, isn't it?
Oh,
do you know, like lots of fire and those dark clouds you got with the really huge explosions, like being kicked in the bollocks, is so bad. And while you're down there, you think, well, thank God he's not kicking me while I'm down. And then he does.
He does, yeah. With a swift follow-up,
Yeah.
I think we've got a problem with, like, almost colloquial language here. We're trying to slot that sort of conversational tone into it, and it just comes off as terrible, doesn't it? It's really poor.
I mean, there's a time and a place conversational
maybe
tone.
a bit of dialogue,
As a narrator, conversational tone. I mean, you go back to Oliver Twist or something like that. Very conversational tone that Dickens uses. So, it's not unheard of for literary greats to be in a conversational tone. But do you think that Dickens would be like, Oliver Twist went to an orphanage?
Kind of.
It was a bit grey, but then, maybe not.
If he did, we wouldn't remember Dickens.
No.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because you have to believe what you're writing.
Yeah.
Or at least be able to convince other people of it. And this reads like he can't convince himself.
Yeah. It's shocking, isn't it?
The conversational, but, if you're doing the Lando Calrissian adventures... Right, I'd be, okay, I'm going to write those, the Lando Calrissian adventures. I'm going to do them in the first person. I'm going to do them in the first person because then we can really get a sense of what a great character Lando Calrissian is. And then I'm going to use a conversational tone because he's a charming man. So I would want to do a little bit of that with my narrator and it would really work for me. But this is not a charming man conversational tone. This is somebody that, do you know, like when they ask out a girl, they're like... do you think could we? And then they run away. Yeah, that's the sort of conviction that there is in this language. It's embarrassing.
Going back to the colloquial thing, I really think that this is there's an expectation from the author as to how the young audience may speak and sound like kind of. You got with a really huge, it is trying to slot into conversations of that intended age group. I think.
Yeah, you might be on the right track there. If a younger child, like 12, 13 or something, was talking to one of their friends, then they might use those words.
It might come
but
out
they
like that.
Wouldn't be using them to describe a planetary explosion.
No.
Because if they were, they would be using the hyperbole. It was enormous, the whole thing exploded, it was completely, bits flying everywhere. It would be so much more, much grander, so much more lively and energetic than this, which is just flat, empty, useless rubbish.
Anticlimactic, isn't it, really? Don't you think?
Yeah. Just think, you're exploding a planet. And that's how you do it.
But they've tried to, haven't they? This is the problem. Is they've tried to do it by using big, really huge. You got intensifier there, storm, shock waves. I don't know. I mean, even the shock waves just sort of roll across. Shock waves don't roll; they pulse violently, don't they? Big debris. It's an intensifier, isn't it? What's that?
I've got a different source.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I'm going to look up big because I'm pretty sure that anyone in the whole world, if I said, find me a better word for big than big, would find one.
Oh, yeah, they would.
There you go. Enormous, immense, vast, massive, extensive, substantial. How long did that take me? Don't give me big. That's crap. Get one of these. You'd be a better writer in 30 seconds. And,
I mean, you have to have a bit of caution with that because you don't just want to put in synonyms when a better description would be better.
Yes.
Use it with caution, Thesaurus, definitely.
But in terms of
I get your point,
rewriting this passage, I can make this passage better by swapping a few synonyms. Yeah. That's all. And it would be better. I can make this passage better by throwing it in the bin and just not having it. But one last word, because we're going to need to spend some time actually writing our passages.
Oh, yeah, coming up for the...
Big debris mushrooming out from the surface, shockwaves starting to roll across the little world.
Yeah.
So big and little are crap words.
Yeah.
But they're also working against each other. If you're trying to create a sense of scale, of the huge vastness of this massive, colossal explosion. See what I did there? Synonyms everywhere.
Everywhere.
Just pulling them out of my arse. If you want to do that, to have that, this is big, and you wouldn't use the word big if you did, unless you're a really bad writer. Don't then use little as well. Well, you don't need it. Why am I saying little world? If you want to reinforce the idea that this planet is smaller than ours, for example, you could say moon, because a moon is big, right? But a little world is little. You see the difference? You could say planetoid. It still sounds bigger than anything that you preface with the word little.
Yeah.
You're working against your own attempt to create scale when you use that word. So just don't use it, because you can just leave it out. Big debris cloud mushrooming out from the surface, shockwaves starting to roll across the world. That's not good writing, that's just common sense.
The only thing that the big and little is, as you say, they do contrast one another. So I think there's a bit of a misguided attempt to create the scale, but to show the contradictory terms in that scale, or the opposing terms, or certainly to illuminate how big the explosion is by saying it's a little world. I think that's all that's going on there. I don't think there's anything more to it than that.
If I have a big explosion on my little finger,
yeah,
what does it do for it? It's just nonsense. It's nonsense.
I
don't
think that's
have that word in
all
there.
they've done it for, is just to use contrasting language.
I don't agree with you. I don't think he thought seriously enough about to suggest that he would be using a contrast there on purpose.
Really?
That is either a pure accident, or he simply thought about it for 30 seconds. Right. I'm a writer. I've got to write. I've written. Job done.
I'll defend
no thought.
Our Charles on this one point, and that's it, I think. Even if it just sort of subconsciously, sort of subliminally happens, but, fair enough.
No, I don't.
But it doesn't. But I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's valid. I'm not saying it's a good use of words or language. But it does just express, this is a big explosion, and this is a little. It doesn't do any more than that.
I don't agree with you, and the reason I don't agree with you is for all of those other passages that we just read.
Well, yeah, that's
and
true.
the fact that you can just read the book.
I've let you down, Charles.
This guy does not think about his writing in that way. He just doesn't.
No.
He just feels like, I'm a writer, so I've got to write. And then you get, it's looked like a storm or a storm cloud perhaps, because he doesn't have the courage to just say it was a storm cloud. And you can do that as a writer. It's a storm cloud. That does more for you than it looked like a storm or a storm cloud perhaps.
Oh yeah, it's very
just say it's a storm cloud.
But to say, to say really huge explosion.
But this isn't a really huge explosion. This is the fire and dark clouds you get with a really huge explosion.
Well, that's true, yeah. It's removed again, isn't it?
Like
it's weakened, it's diluted, isn't it? It just... Actually, the language dilutes itself, doesn't it, really? As you go.
It just seems to me
it's constantly adding lukewarm water to his writing.
Yeah.
The more he writes, the weaker it gets.
But bear in mind, this is Star Wars.
Well, yeah.
So you should,
it should,
if we're using the heat metaphor, be ramping up the temperature. And you don't do that by pouring on lukewarm water.
No. By the end of the book,
Charles Soule needs some gasoline.
It's just a watery passage of writing.
All he's got is a puddle of piss.
It's got a puddle of piss.
So what we're going to do now is rewrite our chosen passage. These lines that we've picked out that probably took all of 5-10 minutes to write.
Yeah.
We're going to rewrite them in 5 to 10 minutes. Ready, steady, go!
Right.
So what I think I'll do is I'll read mine.
Yeah, sure.
And I've rewritten the passage that's before the ships could reach their destination, they encountered something strange. It looked like a storm or a storm cloud, perhaps, a massive blue-grey swirl of vapour out in space, dense and threatening. So I've already written that. Mm-hmm. And I do think that it is quite hard to do when that ship, like the fleeing ships, suddenly there's something happen. It's really hard to do that in a book because you kind of, as you're reading down the page, you're also sort of observing or aware of the words that are coming.
And to have something happen suddenly without using the word suddenly,
it's
quite,
So it is really difficult to do that. So I haven't actually tried to do that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. In fact, what I've tried to do is sort of slow that down a little bit. But the panic flight of the ships came to a sudden halt.
You failed. So start again.
No,
start again.
But the panic flight of the ships came to a sudden halt. I told you it's not easy. The faces of the bridge draining of colour, the chatter of the flight deck slipping into a silence, the fabric of space around them ripped, rent and torn under the scrabbling claws of a ferocious predator digging for prey. Through the vast gashes poured the clouds, its swollen inky depths, billowing outwards to swallow a parsec worth of stars and promise only death to those who saw it. So what I've done there is admittedly that first part is difficult. So I've tried to slow it down. What is one sentence there is now three. I've tried to reintroduce the human element of it. That their reaction to it tells us that this is something strange. I don't have to say, oh, they encountered something strange.
Yeah.
Because I'm not talking to a 4-year-old. I'm writing a book for people that are probably 13 or 14. So I just go, the faces of the bridge crew, draining of colour, the chatter of the flight deck, slipping into silence. Just slowing it down. Then we've got the fabric of space, which is a little bit of a cliche, the fabric of space. It's rent and torn. So there's a lot of language of violence there. The threat there is not something that I have to go, oh, it's threatening. I can just talk about it. It's like there's a scrabbling claws of a ferocious predator digging for prey. So we're the prey. So it's like, yes, there's threat here. All the way through that. There's threat, there's violence. And then I get to the cloud. Through the vast gashes poured the cloud. Its swollen inky depths billowing outwards to swallow a parsec worth of stars. So I'm hoping that people will understand that that is just blotting out as opposed to actually destroying the stars. But at the same time, it's violence, it's threat.
Yeah.
And it promises only death to those who saw it. It's just like, because we're familiar with the bad guys from the previous scene at this point anyway, so we know that they have this reputation of no survivors, so we're linking back to that so people know what this is without me having to go, it's the Nihil, they're threatening, because I've got to have some faith in my audience that they can just put this together.
Yeah. So there's a couple of poetic devices there. You've got a bit of sibilance, have you?
Sibilance, you can use it for a gentleness, but you can also use it for sort of something awkward and unpleasant, sort of lurking on the edges. And it is on. It
calls attention to it as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
So there's that. Whereas in the second half, it's just like the language of the violence, ripped, rent, and torn. They're all kind of synonyms, but they also they're hard to say without almost having a violent tone in your voice. So
and it speeds up, doesn't it? As you read it, you can speed up there as you read that. Definitely.
And the same with the scrabbling claws. There's harsh C's in there as well. But again, it's just trying not to overdo anything too much of predators. It's an obvious image.
But you've got a sense of pacing, you've got poetic devices, you're controlling the speed at which you're, delivering the scene as well. So it works so much better, doesn't it?
And it didn't take 10 minutes.
No, I think it only took about 6 minutes, I think, on there.
Yeah.
6 or 7.
It's just trying to do better.
In your own words, very quickly, what have you tried to do with that scene, do you think?
I've tried to slow down the pacing of the reveal of what this thing is like, as opposed to just saying they encountered something strange, which is so banal and awful.
It is banal, that's a good choice of words. I've
shown you people reacting. I've shown you that something strange has been encountered. Yeah. And I've done that because I don't know really that I'm capable of writing something that would be like that. And suddenly there was this big shock that you would actually feel as a writer. I don't know that I could do that. Yeah. So I haven't tried. Yeah. I've gone the other way. And what that does when you pull that back is you then switch the view to the other way to show what the something strange is. And then you can, like you say, move through the gears. And we've got this threat and this predator that it's alive, it's dangerous. I don't need to tell you that it's threatening if I use language of things that are threatening. The inky cloud, the Nihil that travel in this storm. So I've done a little bit with that, but I don't need to reinvent the wheel at this point in the book. I don't need to be pages and pages describing it billowing this way and billowing that way and the swirls of colour and things. I don't need it. Move through the gears. Yeah. Get to where I need to go. And just have that pace in it that you don't get from like a storm or a storm cloud. Yeah. Perhaps.
It's important to know, it's a really important skill, isn't it, to know when to kind of elongate the description or, as you say, to crank up the gears a bit and to get stuck in. And pacing is really quite important. I don't know if it's spoken about enough, really. But
can it be more important than any genre other than sort of science fiction and Star Wars? When
that's true.
That first movie came out, it was famed for just being like a constant excitement, one scene after the other, another escape, another escape, another escape.
Yeah, and that doesn't reflect it, does it?
It couldn't do it any worse, I don't think. Because once you have that perhaps, it just kills stone dead the what you actually want here, which is excitement, and you want danger.
Yeah.
You have to have conviction.
Well, that's good. Yeah. 5 out of 10? Not bad.
Not bad.
Bad.
I'll take my 5 out of 10. Because
you only get a 5 out of 10 for slipping up on the sudden.
Yeah, you see that if you check your work for errors, that doesn't get through, does it?
No, that's true. Mine begins suddenly. No.
the benefit of
an
editor. I can go, I don't like that sudden. Sort that out for me.
Yeah, I'll give yours I'll give it a go over later. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Actually, edit that out because that sounds ridiculous. That sounds ridiculous, yeah.
I'm definitely leaving it in. Right, tell me what you chose. The third passage.
Yeah, I
did.
I
think you should read the third passage, then read your passage.
And just to reiterate, I chose this because I was more drawn to the fact that you could probably get quite creative with the sense of the smoke and the fire and the explosion, which time hasn't allowed here. Of course, I haven't been able to go to town on that at all. So the original is big debris cloud mushrooming out from the surface, shockwaves starting to roll across the little world, lots of fire and those dark clouds you got with a really huge explosion, like a storm, kind of. Have you just died? You've actually died quite a lot on this video, haven't you?
I don't know if I've died, but I think I've gained about 3 ulcers.
Right, let's see if we can get that up to 5 by the time I've finished.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you've done with it, especially knowing that you've used the bulk of his own words. Yeah,
I've used a few key phrases, I would say. Does it sound like I'm backtracking here?
Kind of.
It should do.
Oh no, it shouldn't, because if it's only kind of to you, it's less than that to me.
Suddenly, all of a sudden.
I'm sorry that I used the word suddenly.
There was a kind of mushroom cloud. No, okay, right, here we go.
Okay, let's do this seriously.
A mushroom cloud exploded into the sky, forcing smoke heated and tinted by fire high above the surface. Shockwaves pulsed across the planet, pulling the violent storm behind it. I do wince a little bit at the fact that I've written violent storm. So it is short. I tried to do a little bit more with the language, a little bit of rhyme in there, a little bit of alliteration in terms of the pulsing, planets pulling.
I didn't have a problem with the violent storm.
No,
it's just that any sort of building on the sense of it, it's like a storm. What's a storm? A storm to people is like, in America, if you live in the hurricane zone, a storm's a big thing, but here a storm's a bit of thunder and lightning of an evening. So it's like you do need, I think, a little bit more than just storm. Qualify that. You could just use, if you wanted to, so like a hurricane. It pulled the hurricane, like hurricane of violence behind it, or something like that.
That would be quite good.
Would be perfectly okay. Just to have that little bit more. To upgrade. Always looking. Is this word doing enough for me? And when you commit yourself to using the words that are there, and the original is so banal, you make a rod for your own back. But I think you did well. It's definitely better. The alliteration gives it, like you say, that movement.
A little bit of something.
Because it goes up, doesn't it? And then it sucks everything in. And then
it back.
Is it like first one is heat, and then you get the explosion that comes along, the shockwave behind. I'm just going to agree. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure somebody, if we get more than 3 views, will correct me in the comments. But that's what I thought.
I had a problem with shockwaves starting to roll across the little world. And it doesn't convey the seriousness of shock waves, at all. I don't think. And lots of fire and those dark clouds you got with it just seems so distant.
I mean, it's a little bit like the storm in mine. Like you can write it for a whole page of like lightning ripping out here, striking out there, and you can go, engulfing trees and burning down cities and things like you can do that, but you're trying to do the similar sort of amount of work that Charles Soule has done, use up the similar amount of space as well.
But what I wanted to do was include the description of the mushroom cloud, then with the smoke, how the smoke was coloured, how was it coloured by the flames. So I was trying to keep it all quite tight and get the movement of it coming above, so the flames, heat, smoke, all rising, so it's a sense of drama, hopefully. And I did have planet, across the planet, dragging the violent storm behind it, and I changed it to pulling because I wanted just that extra alliterative phrasing in there, as you say, give it more sense to how that's moving and happening.
In terms of violent language, you would say that dragging is better than pulling.
Yeah, but
you weighing it up against
it's a funny choice.
What else you want that word to do?
Yeah, because I prefer dragging, but pulling gives you that pulse, pulse. I do think violent storm is lazy, but we didn't have much time to do it.
We talked about how you could have just used hurricane or something,
a bit more specific,
or something, but it still does more than the original.
I quite like the first bit. A mushroom cloud exploded into the sky, forcing smoke, heated and tinted by fire, high above the surface. I think that's got a nice little rhythm to it.
I'm about to tear that bit apart, but I just wanted to see. Are
you going to do it all of a sudden, or suddenly?
Can you guess what word I'm looking at?
What, tinted?
Yeah. Because my immediate reaction to that was if you were trying to suggest you wanted the same beats.
I want the same beats,
meter, but you wanted to suggest something a little bit more off. You could have used tainted.
Something tinted is obviously just slightly a hint of colour, isn't it? Flames and smoke, there's more of a relationship between them, so I would really want something that is a lot stronger, but I couldn't think of something.
Yeah. I would want something, if I was writing that, more than tinted.
Yeah.
Like stained or something like that to suggest a more vibrancy of colour, but also something a little bit off the natural.
Yeah. So I wanted the same beats, you're right. So heated, obviously, two syllables. So I wanted that, but I couldn't think of anything. But you're right, it does need something stronger. So on a return to that, that's when you'd think about how can I make that have more impact, which is why that editing process is so important.
In terms of what we've done, it took 6-7 minutes. As is usual at this point, we have to decide I'm the winner.
Go on then, justify it. Let's see.
I don't need to justify it.
Oh, everybody needs to justify themselves.
I don't think that I do. I think that
at some point in their life.
In terms of, but it gives you a human reaction to the thing, talking about some sort of emotional resonance, and then it helps me to bring that pace down, to then move up through the pace in the second half of it, to really carry a sense of danger, which is just like the imagery of it. Admittedly, his first draft is just so much better than going, this is dense and threatening.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Perhaps.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, don't forget the adverb,
No,
perhaps.
I will try to forget it as long as I live, but I don't know how successful I'll be. So I'm quite.
So you think you get it, do you?
I definitely get it.
You think you get it, do you?
Because I'm on a run. I definitely won last time because you weren't here.
I wasn't even here. Yeah. I think I get the win though. I think there's just a certain something about my work that speaks volumes.
with your violent storm.
It could be the violent storm,
you've barely copied what Charles Soule wrote.
The weekly diluted, tinted. Diluted's featured quite a lot in this video, so should have put that in there somewhere.
No, I don't think so. I think you want vibrancy, much more vibrancy than tinted.
Heated and tinted. I do, you're right. And violent storm. But everything else is top class. Well, though you did at least admit that I had perhaps the hardest passage.
I think that you did in terms of trying to recreate.
And I've tried to use the language of the original. So I've started from a more demanding, complex place than you have. So Really? Just from intellectual bravery alone, I should win. Thank you very much.
How can you argue with intellectual bravery?
I don't know, I think Charles would have a good go at it. He'd probably beat me to death with the blocky thing.
He probably would beat you to death with the big, ugly, blocky thing designed to beat people to death with.
It's just so lazy, isn't it?
Why has nobody in the whole publishing process gone, can we not do a little bit better with this?
Yeah. Well, they certainly should.
Is it as ugly as that they just don't give a toss about their audience? Is it that? Because that would upset me.
That's the implication there, isn't it? Yeah. It has to be. You have to extract that from that.
Because I'm old, I don't really consider myself the Star Wars audience. So I don't get...
And I'm too young for the Star Wars audience.
Of course, you're only 20. But I don't get upset like I probably would have done in my 20s about crappy Star Wars products.
Yeah.
Because it's not for me. I understand that. What I get upset about is that just so much misunderstanding of your own audience, that young people want better than this. They do. And they do know. People that read a lot will know that they deserve better than this. And they'll know where to get it.
Yeah.
And it's just, don't disrespect your audience. They might be young, but they're not stupid.
So the next video is going to be... We don't know yet, do we?
We don't know. We don't know because of COVID, and we don't know because of... We have to have a book that's not very good.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there must be... Well, there are loads.
there are loads, but...
Yeah.
I mean, it's finding one that is fun to do as well.
See you all in the next one.
Bye.